Last time out, we went to a point in United's history before I was born, to the almost glorious 75-76 campaign, our first back in the top flight after promotion. So whilst I'm here in the mid-70s, it only seems fitting to do an unofficial part 2 for the 1976-77 vintage. Could the Doc kick his exciting young side on to greater glory? It'd been 9 years since the club had last won a trophy, but the way the boys had played the season before, we were due. The 1976-77 football season saw a significant step in the modern football era. Sides on the same points would now be separated by goal difference, not goal average. Apart from that, the game was basically the same as the one from 12 months earlier. It was the physical, get-stuck-in combative English game, and you were expected to cope with it with far smaller squads. There was little commercialism, and it was a game without the pandemic of abusing referees and their decisions at every opportunity. And for the most part, there was little gamesmanship like diving. It was a man's game on the pitch, but as with most of the decade, it was wild on the terraces, and the United fans had Tommy Docherty's exciting, attacking side to support. Back in the summer of 76, it was one of the biggest heatwaves on record. Czechoslovakia shot West Germany with a winning Panenka penalty to take the Euros, and the Dot was preparing the ground for a bumper campaign full of optimism and great expectations. There were some additions to the squad, Colin Waldron from Burnley in the May, and mysteriously Alan Foggen for £40,000 in July, who then left the club before autumn or starting a match. On their way out, Steve James, Arnie Sidebottom and Clive Griffiths had all left Old Trafford before the end of the last campaign. Due to coming third in last season's title race, the Docks men earned a place in this season's UEFA Cup. Kicking off in mid to late August, we started the season at Old Trafford against Birmingham City with a 2-2 draw. On the road we recorded our first win against Coventry City in a comfortable 2-0 victory. The final match of August was against the champions of 2 seasons previous, Derby County, and we grabbed a point in a goalless draw. Unbeaten for the month, but hardly setting the league on fire, Aston Villa led the way with their 2 wins, but in fact it was a 9-way tie for first, with 4 points. United opened the doors to already struggling Spurs in the first week of September, and quickly took a 2-0 lead with his cracker from Koppel, Pancho Pearson adding a second. However, the North Londoners clawed their way back in to win it 3-2. The rest of the month was far more solid though. A credible point at St James's Park was followed up with 2 victories. Borough at home was our first win of the season at Old Trafford thanks to an own goal, and Pancho's third in as many games. Sweeter still was a Derby win at Main Road, recording a comfortable 3-1 scoreline. Koppel, McCreary and Daly all getting on the scoresheet that day. By the end of the month we were third, a point behind leaders Liverpool and the surprise early contender in Middlesbrough. Our perennial challenge for the League Cup began with a 5-0 second round win over Tranmere at home. The third round draw was against Sunderland on September the 22nd, where I had emerged into the world about 7.5 hours before kick-off, and so couldn't attend in my newborn state. The boys could only birthday gift me a 2-2 draw, which would mean a replay at Roker Park at the beginning of October. Another cup campaign that started at the beginning of September was our UEFA Cup charge. Drawn against the giants Ajax of Amsterdam in the first round, no seeding in those days of course, we were playing the 3 times back-to-back European Cup winners from 71 to 73, but fortunately for us, Cruyff and Nayskins had already left for Barcelona by this point. The first leg in Amsterdam saw 7,000 Reds in attendance. We lost that night 1-0 and it could have been a lot worse had it not been for some top-level defending. The return at Old Trafford just before the end of the month created an electric atmosphere. The faithful were duly rewarded with a decisive 2-0 victory thanks to goals from Macari and McElroy. That set up an almost as daunting second round tie against Juventus the following month. Into October, and with an uneasy start to the season, the Dot bought Chris McGrath in from Spurs for £30,000 to add some more creativity into midfield, as if there wasn't enough already. But there was also disappointment for the United support as fan favourite Big Jim Holton was sold to Sunderland for £64,000 after never fully recovering from 2 leg breaks the 18 months before. This was another disjointed month in the league. We started well enough, claiming a 2-0 win at Ellen Road. However, that was followed by humbling at the Hawthorns 4-0. In fact, we won't win again in the league until around a week before the new year. The final 2 matches of the month were against East Anglian opposition, and both at Old Trafford. We drew 2-2 against Norwich, following it up with a 1-0 defeat to high-flying Ipswich, who moved into 3rd spot with that win. The league table made miserable reading, down to 11th, albeit with games in hand against most opposition ahead of us in the standings. Back to the League Cup, and another facet of the English game of that era, multiple cup replays. Having drawn at Old Trafford the previous month, the two sides reprised the same scoreline, meaning a second replay back at home only 2 days later. Brian Greenough, who'd scored in the first replay, did it again in the second one, securing a fourth round tie against Newcastle at the end of the month. The Geordies were far easier to dispatch than the Mackhams as we beat them 7-2 at Old Trafford. Back into Europe, and a typical Gordon Hill cracker gave us a slender 1-0 lead over Juventus to take to Turin in early November. However, our European dream ended in tatters at the second round stage against the eventual winners after being done over 3-0 in northern Italy. Back in the league, and we fared no better there. November was a dire month. A 3-2 defeat at Villa Park was followed by 2 draws against Sunderland and Leicester City. A 2-0 home loss to West Ham, and we plunged to 15th spot in the table. The wheel seemed to have well and truly fallen off the Doc's exciting young side. In the previous November, United had made the significant signing of winger Gordon Hill. And with the side struggling in the league and already out of Europe, the Doc wanted to add to the side's firepower and opted for Stoke City's Jimmy Greenough, the older brother of centre-back Brian. By the way, Jimmy took a £50 a week pay cut to come to Old Trafford. The Barnsley boys' arrival would seal the fate of an Old Trafford fan favourite, but more of that later. Due to some terrible early winter weather, the fixture programme was severely impacted up and down the country in December. Remember, there's no undersoil heating or hybrid grass mixes that are the staple of today's pitches, which are evergreen from August to May. The grounds were often waterlogged and unplayable once late autumn kicked in. In early December, we were dumped out of the League Cup at the quarter-final stage by Everton 3-0, but we got our revenge in the league at the month's end, a 4-0 trouncing of the Toffees, with Jimmy Greenough opening his account. A defeat at Highbury to Arsenal preceded that match, and we ended the year still in 15th position. In fact, we were 14 points behind the leaders Liverpool, but due to the terrible weather, had 5 games in hand. Into January, and it looked like our form had finally turned a corner. Despite Ipswich getting the double over us, we won all 4 of our other league fixtures. 3 of them were at home, to be fair, as we caught up on postponed games. Villa were comfortably dispatched on New Year's Day 2-0, and maximum points were earned against Coventry, Bristol and Birmingham City. 8 points better off, we rose up the table to 8th spot. 9 points behind Liverpool, but still with 3 games in hand. But at least in the league it looked like it wasn't going to be half as bad a campaign as it seemed in late autumn. Obviously, with the start of the new year, we began our FA Cup journey, with the lads keen to keep Doc's promise of returning to Wembley the following May and taking the trophy back to Manchester. Walsall at home is about as good a third round draw as you could get, and Gordon Hill, who would end the season as the club top scorer, got the winner in that one. The 4th round gifted us another home draw, struggling QPR, a shadow of their championship challenge of just 12 months before. Again, a 1-0 win was the result, Lou Macari this time with a winning goal. The footballing gods thought they'd have some fun in February as they provided us with a trip to our cup final foes from the previous May, 2nd Division Southampton. With revenge on our minds and a mental obstacle to overcome, we went to the Dell and earned ourselves a credible draw. We would now have to replay at Old Trafford at the beginning of March. Back to the league, and it was another month of progress as we tried to make up some ground with our games in hand. A solid 3-1 home win over Derby County was followed by sweet revenge on Spurs for the early season loss by beating them on their own patch 3-1. The struggling Lily Whites weren't too big to go down. They'd be relegated at the season's end. A draw at home to league leaders Liverpool followed, and the month was finished off with a tremendous Jimmy Greenough hat-trick in a 3-1 Old Trafford win over Newcastle. That result over the Geordies moved us up to 4th, 7 points behind the champions, but with 2 games in hand. Our fine form continued into March. It seemed like a lot of the originally cancelled matches were supposed to be at home, so we're getting a good run of games at Old Trafford. We got the league double over City as we won the derby 3-1 again, then repeated that feat against Leeds by a goal to 0. However, we then began a lot of mediocre or worse results, starting with a 2-2 home draw versus West Brom. By the end of March we dropped to 5th, but just 7 points behind leaders Ipswich and Liverpool, but with games in hand. We could potentially cut the gap to just 1 point. Now finally, to resolve that Jimmy Greenough foreshadowing, it was the shock exit of Jerry Daly. Jimmy's arrival saw Sammy McIlroy drop back into midfield where he belonged at the expense of Daly, who was superb going forward but was severely lacking defensively. The Irishman was shipped out to Derby County by the Dock for £188,888. Regardless of outgoings from the club, we continued on the road to Wembley. Already forming a telepathic understanding with Stuart Pearson, Jimmy Greenough kept repaying his transfer fee with a brace in the 5th round cup replay against the Saints, sending us into a quarter-final versus Villa, also at home. We did get a decent amount of luck with getting home cup ties that season. Stuart Houston and Lou Macari both scored a goal apiece to edge past the record cup holders and into what was touted as a veritable bloodbath to be between United fans and those of their opponents' Leeds in the semis at Hillsborough. Understandably though, the wheels finally fell off our league form in April. Instead of fitting 1 or 2 more league fixtures into March, we had 8 First Division games to play over 4 weeks this month, plus that aforementioned cup semi-final. Something had to give. It didn't start too badly, we did lose to Norwich at Carrow Road, but the 2 subsequent games at Goodison Park and at home to Stoke saw us come away with maximum points. Those 3 matches were all played in a week. The rest of the month was pretty much an awful blur. 2 days after the Stoke win, we went up to Roker Park and came home empty-handed. This was followed by a 1-1 draw against Leicester, then 2 heavy defeats to QPR and Middlesbrough. To be fair, any league title aspirations had long since dissipated by the QPR defeat. To demonstrate the backlog, we played the return match against the West London club at Old Trafford next, winning 1-0 thanks again to Lou Macari. We were now level on games with league leaders Liverpool, whose closest challengers in the title race were City, and there was no way back for us, albeit with 5 matches to go. Amongst all of that, we played the Cup semi-final on St George's Day, and unlike the media portrayal, there was nowhere near any kind of the same level of violence that locals and police had feared. The game itself, as with a pair of league games, ran our way, as Jimmy Greenough and Steve Coppell scored 2 early goals, which settled us down. The 2-1 scoreline didn't justify our dominance that day, and we booked our place in the final against the Liverpool side who fancied themselves for the treble. Into May, and Liverpool mathematically ended our challenge with a 1-0 over us at Anfield. 2 draws at Bristol and Stoke followed, putting us further off the pace and out of UEFA Cup contention for next season. However, what was far worse though, is that in the Bristol game, left-back Stuart Houston broke his leg, meaning that he would miss the final. A welcome 3-0 win over Arsenal restored some dignity in our last game at Old Trafford before our Wembley showdown. We ended the league season into a disappointing 6th spot, 10 points behind Liverpool, who retained their title, with City just a point behind them. We were assured of Europe, regardless of what happened on the 27th of May at Wembley. Due to our opponents Liverpool winning the title, we were automatically guaranteed the place reserved for cup winners. There were few surprises in the United lineup. Arthur Albiston replaced the injured Stuart Houston, of course. Everything else was as expected. The cup final that everyone wanted was decided in a 5-minute spell just after half-time. Stuart Pearson opened the scoring after Jimmy Greenoff's header on. The Scousers hit back within a couple of minutes, as Jimmy Casey's snapshot beat Alex Stepney, who for the 2nd year in a row at Wembley should have done better. However, as you know, United had the last say. Just minutes after the equaliser, little Lou Macari's shot was heading for the corner flag, but it cannoned in off new Stretford End hero Jimmy Greenoff's chest and into the net. United held on for the remainder of the game, and Martin Buchan lifted the first trophy for our club in almost a decade, and the FA Cup for the 4th time. The Scousers' treble dream had been busted. The Doc had kept his promise, his young side had shown their potential by winning silverware, and there was at that point everything to look forward to. However, it's not much of a reveal, as you all probably do know, the Doc's love affair between him and the physio's wife, Mary Brown. He was then given his marching orders. So that was my season as a United fan, 76-77. What were your memories of that campaign, and how far do you think we could have got with the Doc had he kept his job? Write in the comments below and like, share and subscribe. Thank you as always for your support.